I'd rather be here, a free man among brothers, facing a long march and a hard fight, than to be the richest citizen of Rome.
Hi, I'm Tye Justis, and in this episode I'm discussing Spartacus, the film about a slave revolt that single-handedly destroyed the Hollywood blacklist more than 60 years ago, and why we have Ben-Hur to thank for it. Stay tuned. History depicts Spartacus as a Thracian of nomadic stock, a brilliant tactician, a mighty warrior, and a slave, trained to die in the arena as a gladiator by Rome in the 1st century BCE. Spartacus would go on to lead a legendary slave revolt classified as the Third Servile or Slave War of the Roman Republic. But what does any of this have to do with the blacklist? Well, it all starts with the late great movie star producer Kirk Douglas. After being rejected by William Wyler to play the lead in the upcoming epic Ben-Hur, Douglas walked away determined to show Wyler what he had passed on in classic I'll show you spirit. At that moment, Douglas unknowingly set plans in motion that would end a more than decade-long reign of American terror. Kirk Douglas then quickly buys the rights to Spartacus, the novel written by blacklisted novelist Howard Fast, who began to research Spartacus while in prison for his past communist beliefs and refusing to name names to the House Un-American Activities Committee. To get a better idea about what all that means, let's take a quick look back at the Communist Red Scare, a definite dark period in American history. After World War II, an official committee was convened to seek out communists in American society, during a wave of ultra-patriotism that became an obsessive fervor once Senator Joseph R. McCarthy stepped in. The House Un-American Activities Committee, or HUAC as it was more commonly known, interrogated anyone who had any ties to communism, even inadvertently, and grilled them about their political loyalties. Once in the hot seat, you also had to name anyone you knew or suspected of being a communist, Bill of Rights be damned. Those who refused on the basis of morality, reason, or even a basic understanding of their constitutional rights were convicted of contempt of court, no matter that it was a kangaroo court, and sentenced to prison. The so-called guilty parties were also blacklisted upon exit from prison and not allowed to be employed within the United States, unless you wanted the FBI, under fascist J. Edgar Hoover, breathing down your neck. This travesty and miscarriage of justice went unchecked for over 10 years, proving that freedom and due process are just words when brutes and deplorables are controlling even the greatest democracy. Spartacus the movie is taking shape. But the road ahead is difficult, paved with multiple writers, various directors, and no studio interest whatsoever. In fact, Spartacus is turned down by every major studio but one, the one that nobody wanted. Coming to Universal Studios, on the brink of bankruptcy as it stood, was considered a last desperate act in the late 50s. Kirk Douglas and his Bryna Productions had no choice but to go with Universal after no other studio would touch a film based on a book written by a confirmed commie. Howard Fast gave Kirk Douglas the filming rights to his novel Spartacus for $100, provided he got to write the script himself. Now this would end in disaster, but would also serendipitously lead to the name Sam Jackson and the making of history. The script Fast was producing was terrible, and Douglas needed to replace him and get a new script ASAP. That's when he was given the name Sam Jackson, a pseudonym for blacklisted scribe Dalton Trumbo, previously jailed by HUAC and known not only for being the best screenwriter in town, but the fastest. Douglas agreed to bring Trumbo on and let Fast go, a decision that would bring unexpected revelations. Blacklisted writers in Hollywood would have to take whatever payment they were given, writing under assumed names, no matter what they were paid before. Dalton Trumbo was one of the highest paid screenwriters in Hollywood before HUAC turned him and his fellow blacklistees into pariahs for refusing to participate in a modern American Inquisition. Trumbo was perfect for Spartacus, delivering glorious, emotionally complex pages in record time. Trumbo's creative genius also extended into the LGBTQ+ community years before it was a modern movement. The later exorcised snails and oysters scene, hinting at the character Crassius's bisexuality, was salacious, scandalous, and groundbreaking.
Do you eat oysters?
When I have them, master.
Do you eat snails?
No, master.
Do you consider the eating of oysters to be moral and the eating of snails to be immoral?
No, master.
My taste includes both snails and oysters.
Now, direction was another complicated issue. Director Anthony Mann was hired and shot the introductory scene to the film, but after the first week's filming couldn't seem to rein in the four famous writer-directors who were also co-starring in the film, and had to be let go, which Mann was honestly relieved by. But who was going to direct this ballooning beast of a film that by its end would have more than tripled its initial budget? Douglas and Stanley Kubrick met a few years before on the film Paths of Glory, and Kubrick, freshly fired by Marlon Brando, was momentarily free. Kismet. Anecdotally, this was the film that's known to have destroyed Douglas and Kubrick's friendship. They never worked together again. Kubrick claimed that Spartacus was never one of his films. Not really. While his job was actually just to fill in a mechanical gap in production, to run and gun. He was never even in the running to direct Spartacus in the first place. Douglas later wrote that Kubrick was arrogant and refused to shoot emotionally important scenes because he thought they were stupid. But as Douglas later stated in an interview, the producer always wins. And Douglas was right.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Through everything, Spartacus was finally in the can after 2 years of filming. All that was left was one last battle off screen, the one last hurdle that stalked the production and Kirk Douglas from the very beginning, the blacklist. Kirk Douglas freely admitted that though he disdained the blacklist and everything that it stood for, that it was not his intent to take on the blacklist when he started Spartacus. From the jump, Douglas and everyone attached to the film just kept pushing the lie that was Sam Jackson. But no matter how hard they tried to keep the cat in the bag, the secret was getting harder and harder to keep. Gossip mongers of the day were chomping at the bit that blacklisted socialist Dalton Trumbo was writing the screenplay for a film made from a communist novel. Muckslinger and all-around horrible person Walter Winchell even outed Trumbo as Spartacus's true screenwriter. Gossip maven Hedda Hopper told her massive fanbase to skip the film, even after she graciously visited the set. The deck was stacked from day one. Massively over budget, directors fired, expensive reshoots, forbidden writers. Now the critics were turning on a movie before it had even previewed. Even with the very real possibility of being blacklisted himself and losing everything he ever worked for, Douglas, after playing an historical hero for the better part of 2 years, became one in his own time and made the decision that enough was finally enough. Dalton Trumbo would be given the dignity and recognition he had been denied for years, his name. Consequences be damned, Dalton Trumbo's name would be on movie screens once again. The American Legion of Decency, 17,000 chapters strong around the country in 1960, vowed to protest the film in every state. It seemed the writing was on the wall. A film that openly spoke of homosexuality and depicted graphic violence was too much for American audiences to handle. Being written by so-called commie pinkos as well, Spartacus the film was seen as doomed as the actual rebellion the real Spartacus ignited over 2,000 years before. That was until a certain president crossed the picket line. Protests ended up being light outside the historic D.C. Warner Theater as newly elected President John F. Kennedy stepped past the meager picket line with the Secret Service to watch a screening of Spartacus at 8 p.m. The credits rolled, and as Kirk Douglas told him it would be, Dalton Trumbo's name, missing from screens for more than a decade, was back. Even if the film failed, it would fail with honest blood, sweat, tears, and guts. Everyone, including John F. Kennedy himself, were in awe of Spartacus. That was the night the blacklist was broken. Spartacus was a huge hit, grossing over $60 million in its initial run, worth about $530 million or over $500 million in today's cash value, won 4 Academy Awards, and ended a particularly shameful chapter in American history. After Spartacus's success, Dalton Trumbo met with Douglas to thank him for giving him back his name. In later years, Douglas lamented that it should never have been his to give. Kirk Douglas never said he made the decision to use Dalton Trumbo's real name out of any sense of immediate burning moral conviction, but humbly admitted that it was a decision in many ways forced on him by the circumstances going on around him. But in the end, he still risked everything, even possibly being blacklisted himself, becoming the very embodiment of the hero Spartacus only centuries later. Kirk Douglas not only showed William Wyler, he showed the world. Spartacus was unfortunately cut for re-release. Missing were the more graphic depictions of violence and the scene between Tony Curtis and Laurence Olivier, Antoninus and Crassus, indicating that Crassus is bisexual. The film was thankfully restored to as much of its original glory as possible in 1991 by Robert A. Harris. Then in 2015 by Universal, where 12 more minutes were added back, bringing the epic back to where it was meant to be. The original negative was scanned at 6K and restored at 4K resolution for future generations to enjoy. Despite not considering Spartacus truly one of his films, when asked about participating in the first major restoration of Spartacus in the early 1990s, Kubrick kindly sent the team restoring the film extensive notes about scenes and colors to get the most accurate restoration possible. The special features from the exquisite Criterion Laserdisc from 1992 were ported over onto a 2-DVD set from Criterion in 2001. The cast and crew commentary and separate Trumbo commentary, notes being read by an actor in his voice, are amazing glimpses into the process of making the film, from the writing of the original novel to the movie and its legacy by those who made it happen. The first HD DVD from 2006 and subsequent Blu-rays until 2015 were all problematic, and it wasn't until the 2015 extended fully restored Blu-ray that the film looked how it should for such an important Universal catalog title. The 4K releases are even more stunning, but the very enlightening Criterion commentaries are only found on the Criterion Laserdisc and DVD sets. The 4K and Blu-rays do have some nice special features, but they still don't hold a candle to the original extras put on the Criterion Laserdisc in 1992 and again on DVD in 2001. The standard 4K Steelbooks and Blu-rays since 2015 have the same standard special features, but different sound mixes from 4K to Blu-ray to DVD and Laserdisc. Music can either elevate a film or be completely forgettable. Alex North's score not only elevated Spartacus, but it gave the film its soul. Spartacus was a rare triumph up on the screen and behind the scenes at the same time, and it destroyed the blacklist with one name: Trumbo. Sadly, the most vocal father of the Red Scare in America, Wisconsin Republican Senator Joseph R. McCarthy, was not alive to watch his monster die, instead drinking himself to death in 1957 at the age of 48, soon after being chastised by Joseph Welch with words that have echoed throughout history: "Have you no sense of decency?" A fitting end. I love this film for its quiet moments of reflection and sacrifice devoid of speech, definitely Kubrick's contributions, and nuanced multi-layered dialogue scenes, Trumbos. The moments in this movie are filled with just as much action as heartbreak, told like a Shakespearean tragedy, and hit on a real level you can feel when you watch it, even over half a century after its premiere. The scene between Spartacus and Antoninus being a perfect example, and one that I can't watch without it breaking me every time.
I love you, Spartacus, as I loved my own father.
I love you like my son that I'll never see. Go to sleep.
Spartacus was a mature, literate, profound telling of man's eternal struggle for freedom, love, and his place in the world against tyranny, oppression, and the greed that keeps the masses chained to this day. Written, performed, and produced with the utmost quality and human impact, Spartacus has become more than just a film, more than just a retelling of history with a touchstone of truth. It's become a rallying cry for all those who yearn to be free from inequity, the system be damned, whatever system of oppression that may be. When in doubt, remember, I'm Spartacus, you're Spartacus, and we're Spartacus when we stand together as one.
When just one man says, no, I won't, Rome begins to fear.
I'm Tye Justis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I Am Spartacus by Kirk Douglas is a great resource if you want to know even more about the history behind the making of the film Spartacus from the man who made it happen.